Hey you and welcome. My name is Mike, and as we ring in the new year and sprint into the 20s, I thought it would be a good idea to look into the story of Joanna Yeates, who disappeared in Bristol in 2010. It happened over the Christmas period, and the case stretched into the following year, the new year. And it led to some pretty big consequences, though not in the way you might expect. It's a harrowing story, especially, at this time of year. So let's hit the bricks and look into the case of the disappearance of what happened to Joanna Yeates. Let's go. Joanna Yeates was born in 1985, growing up in Hampshire, southern England. She loved the outdoors and landscaping in particular, and after receiving her postgraduate diploma in landscape architecture from the University of Gloucestershire, she met her boyfriend, Greg Reardon, and the two moved to Bristol in 2010, where Joanna began working at Building Design Partnership, an architectural and engineering firm. Life was, going along, quiet, pretty good, until December rolled around. On the weekend of the 17th of December, Greg had left to go to Sheffield, visiting family, around the Christmas time, leaving Joanna alone in Bristol. She spent some time that evening, the 17th, with some workmates at the Bristol Ram pub, and she specifically said she wasn't looking forward to the weekend, as it would be her first time alone in the flat, and she'd be nervous. She left the pub at about 8 p.m, on the way home popping into a supermarket, but she didn't buy anything. She then called a friend to arrange a meetup over the Christmas. At 8:35 p.m, she popped into Tesco supermarket to buy some pizza pie and also picked up a couple of bottles of cider for a tasty treat. And then she was gone. Greg returned back to Bristol at about 8 p.m. on the 19th, and there was no sign of Joanna. Over the weekend, he had, tried calling, texting, trying to get through to her. Nada. When at home, he rang her again. This time, he found her phone in her coat pocket, still in the flat. He also found her purse, keys, and a very hungry cat. A few hours later, he called her parents. They didn't know where she was, and not long after that, he called the police to report her missing.
Well, this is even more heartbreaking and distressing, being at a time of year when so many of us are getting ready to spend time with our relatives. Instead, the parents of Jo Yeates have found themselves caught up in this mystery of what exactly has happened to their daughter. Both of them, her boyfriend Greg and her friends, have been doing all that they can this week to try and find her, to try and raise awareness that she's gone missing. There are posters on every lamppost along this street. There's a website that's been set up. For all of them, though, Christmas really is on hold until they find Jo.
An investigation began, and her parents would make an appeal on TV just a few days before Christmas.
So terribly.
I'm missing being able to hold her, and cuddle her, and just say everything's all right. And I just want her back, wherever she is. Jo, my little Jo, come back. And if anybody's got her, don't keep her. Give her back to us. We miss her so much. I know that's obvious, and nobody can feel the pain that we feel. But we want to thank absolutely everyone who's been helping us, our school friends, our best friends, our college friends. They've just...
And they genuinely didn't have much to go on. Her coat, purse, keys, phone, they had been left in the flat, so she must have come home after, meeting up with her friends and, popping into the shops and whatnot. They found the 2 bottles of cider, one of which had been opened and a few sippy sips taken out of it. They couldn't find the pizza that they had seen her buy in Tesco, interestingly. They never found a package for it, they never found the pizza itself, they only found a receipt for it. So what happened to the pizza is a mystery in itself, but we don't have time to get into that today.
Okay.
I believe Joanna reached her home address on Friday evening, and this would have been at some time shortly after 8:30 p.m. in the evening. This is because we have found within the flat her coat, her mobile phone and keys. I know that from CCTV she went to Tesco's in Clifton Village and she purchased a pizza. I have here a pizza which is similar in all respects to the one we believe she purchased, which is a Tesco's finest tomato, mozzarella and basil pesto pizza. Within the flat we can find no evidence of this pizza or any of the wrappings, and so I would like to make an appeal, firstly for anyone who has any information about where Joanna is now, or any information about this that can indicate what's happened to her. But I'd also like to make an appeal for anyone who knows where this pizza is, or whether any of the wrappings are, or where the box is.
There was also no sign of any forced entry into the abode, so the investigators began to think this looks like an abduction. Maybe she knew who it was. The search continued, but they had jack shit to go on. Then, on Christmas Day, less than 2 weeks after she was last seen, her frozen body was found, fully clothed, except for a missing sock, near a golf course and quarry 3 miles from her home. The autopsy determined she'd been strangled. And they had a murder investigation on their hands.
The investigation into the death of 25-year-old Joanna Yeates is now a murder investigation, and I am leading that murder investigation. As you know, the post-mortem examination has taken longer than usual because of the frozen condition of her body. The pathologist completed his examination last night and concluded that the cause of her death was compression of the neck, in other words, strangulation. As a result of the findings of the post-mortem, we believe that Joanna's body has been in the roadside verge off Longwood Lane, Fayland, for several days before being discovered on Christmas morning.
The investigation, called Operation Braid, was one of the largest ever police investigations in the Bristol area. Anyone with information was urged to come forward. The police received thousands of tips from the public, examining hundreds of hours of surveillance footage, focusing on the route between her home and where she was found. The community program Crime Stoppers offered $10,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of whoever did this, while the Sun newspaper offered $50,000. But the murderer was still at large. A woman who had been at a party in one of Joanna's neighbours' homes said that night, shortly after 9 p.m, she heard 2 loud screams come from the direction of where Joanna's flat was. Just after 9 p.m. would have been around the time she had come home, so she literally would have just walked in the door. And another neighbour who lived behind Joanna's said that he heard a woman scream, "Help me," but he couldn't exactly say when it was and when he had heard that. The investigation, it was huge. It was all over social media. Police released footage and appeals on all platforms, appealing to, well, anyone and everyone. And they got someone. Though they probably wished they hadn't. On December 30th, 5 days after Joanna's body had been found, Christopher Jeffries, Joanna's landlord, and he also lived in the same house, he was arrested. Arrested on suspicion of murder. One of the reasons people began to finger point at Christopher Jeffries was that he had helped Greg fix his car earlier in the day on December 17th, meaning that he would have been aware Joanna would have been on her own for the weekend. And some people took this to believe he may have been able to plot something sinister. As you can probably guess, this would be a huge mistake. He would be detained for 96 hours before being released on bail. Christopher Jeffries would be absolutely vilified in the media, with the rags calling him creepy, strange, a fan of dark and violent films. What a weirdo. A strange looking retired English teacher who lived alone. Obviously it was him. What a weirdo. Perv, sicko, hang him. That would come back to bite them all in the ass. And after he was cleared, by the police that is, he wasn't cleared by, those rags. The search for the actual killer continued.
I will emphasise once again that this is a complex investigation and we are meticulously investigating. Thank you.
Until it stopped, when they found him. On the 20th of January, 32-year-old Dutch national Vincent Tabak, who lived with his girlfriend in the flat next door to Joanna's, he was arrested. The police, they learned pretty quickly not to release everything to the media like they had done with Christopher, but it was revealed they had been tipped off about Vincent Tabak from an anonymous caller after an appeal on Crime Watch. You see, he had actually been ruled out very early in the investigation and had spent New Year's in the Netherlands, his homeland. But I mean, look at that face, come on. Hey, I'm doing that thing they did to Christopher Jeffries. That's ironic. DNA that was found on Joanna's body, it done matched. See, one of the things that really led to his arrest was his own arrogance, I guess you could say, because upon hearing of Christopher, being arrested, oh boy, he loved that. Spotting a chance to frame Christopher, he contacted police and suggested the landlord had been out and about in his car on the night of Joanna's death. The murder team sent a detective to Amsterdam, and on New Year's Eve, the detective spoke to Vincent at a hotel near the airport for 6 hours. And Vincent's behaviour seemed suspicious. You see, he would talk to the detective about Christopher. Yeah, he did it. But seemed overly interested in the forensic examinations the police were doing. He was asked to provide a DNA sample and fingerprints so they could be eliminated if they were found in the flat. Vincent, he was concerned about this, but yeah, he cooperated because of course, it was Jeffries. Christopher Jeffries did it, not me. Of course I'll give you my DNA. Mistake. But I'm glad he made it, because he's a loser. After 96 hours of questioning, Vincent was charged on the 22nd of January 2011 with the murder of Joanna Yeates. Bail was denied, and he was moved from Bristol prison due to fears for his safety, and he was also placed under suicide watch. Vincent's family and friends in the Netherlands started to raise funds for his court defence. Why? And so Vincent would deny having anything to do with Joanna's death, saying he had never met her. He didn't. Who? Joanna? Joanna who? Say it again? I've never heard of her before. That shit didn't fly for very long. Vincent, he was described as introverted, a bit of a loner. He worked at an engineering consultancy and had been living with his girlfriend for a year before Joanna and Greg moved in next door. In the months before Joanna's death, Vincent, whose job took him across the UK and the USA, he would often contact sex workers. He also had a penchant for the more violent porno, and also women who looked like Joanna. So yeah. However, after 2 weeks in prison, he told the prison chaplain that he intended to plead guilty, that he had done it. On the 5th of May 2011, Vincent Tabak pled guilty to the manslaughter, not to murder. He didn't intentionally kill her. Yeah, the trial will begin in October. The prosecutor stated that Vincent might have been spying on Joanna and may have found an excuse to knock on her door that night, rather than being spontaneously invited in. Then he overpowered her within minutes of her arriving home that night, pinning her down in a long struggle, which inflicted 43 cuts, bruises, and a fractured nose on her body. He then put her body in his car and disposed of her. Vincent, in his defense, would say that Joanna, she had invited him in, flirtily, wink wink, for a drink that night. When he tried to kiss her, she screamed, and that's when he accidentally killed her while trying to silence her. No one bought that, and he was sentenced to life in prison, so great.
Vincent Tabak was a cunning, dishonest and manipulative man who knew exactly what he was doing when he killed Jo Yeates. Today he's been convicted by a jury of her murder last year, despite claiming he meant her no harm. He was cunning and dishonest towards his girlfriend, with whom he maintained a normal relationship, even going so far as to text her shortly after Jo was dead to say he was bored.
Now, the accusations against Christopher Jeffries, they were a big deal. The media were highly criticised for their false accusations against an innocent man.
Anything that I have said to the police, and I'm not prepared to make any comments to the media. Arrested and held on suspicion of killing Joe, he also found himself hounded by the press.
I'd been plucked out of a very ordinary, everyday life into these circumstances which were so unexpected and so strange and so irrational as to be almost surreal.
Even Joanna's boyfriend, Greg, would say in a statement, "Joe's life was cut short tragically, but the finger-pointing and character assassination by social and news media of as yet innocent men has been shameful." In 2011, Christopher accepted substantial damages for defamation from The Sun, The Daily Mirror, The Sunday Mirror, The Daily Record, The Daily Mail, The Daily Express, The Daily Star and The Scotsman in connection with their coverage of his arrest. How many fucking daily newspapers are there in the UK? Christopher Jeffries would later give evidence at the Levinson inquiry, an investigation into the ethics and behaviour of the British media. After, well, there was this whole thing when, the news of the world were found to be hacking into celebrities and politicians' phones, which is highly illegal and pretty disgusting. In 2013, Christopher got a full apology from the police.
Yes, I mean, it was certainly suggested that there may well have been some sort of sexual motivation for the murder of Joanna Yeates. And at the time, obviously, I was suspected of that murder. On the other hand, it was suggested in some of the articles that I was gay, so that created a bit of a problem as far as that particular line was concerned. And I think it was then suggested in another article that the answer might be that I was bisexual. So the press were trying to have it every possible way.
And so ends the case of Joanna Yeates. I think the moral here is that we should all be careful of who we accuse. I mean, it's something we're all guilty of, including me. But, an innocent man like Christopher Jeffries, he got fucked. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. And I really cannot thank you enough for all your support over the past few years. Support of that chapter. It's been incredible. And as I said, I cannot thank you enough. Now, sadly, I have some bad news. This will be my last video of the decade because, it's 2020 tomorrow. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And as always, I'll see you real soon. Mike out.